So what is mental resilience? When I first came to China, I brought along an approach from the UK called mental toughness, uh, and it was mostly about mindsets, mostly about there's genetic aspects of mental toughness also, um, but really it's very a psychological model, and it's really useful. It's helpful. It's good for performance. But as I was saying before, the whole COVID experience has really shown us the importance of relationships, and that there's actually resilience that exists in our relationships between each other. When you get people together, we amplify each other's strengths, we reinforce each other, and it's a synergy. We're greater than the sum of our parts. So so resilient mindset is just that internal cognitive mental aspect of it, the psychological aspect of it. Um, but I've added some dimensions to this model. So social connection, you know, which is the other. So we've got the inner, and the other people, and then also the outer, which is about having perspective and meaning, an overarching sense of the big picture by which we can navigate and draw meaning and perspective and wisdom. A simple example is if you're about to make a life decision, consult the big picture first. Think about, okay, what does this really mean? For who I am, where I've come from, where I am, and where I'm going. What does it mean? What are the full consequences of this decision? So, incredibly important capacity for leaders, okay, to rise above whatever's happening and like a periscope above the waves and notice working out where to go or what decision to make. So these three elements are critical for our own mental resilience. We need our own individual strengths, absolutely. But we're not lone wolves. We're human beings, and we're social collaborative beings, and we always have been. There's never been such a thing as a lone wolf. Even wolves don't have lone wolves. Wolves are the most social animals in the world. So they work together in packs. So humans are social beings, and it's great to acknowledge it. And I think there's no doubting it now after the COVID experience. Also, perspective and meaning. Having hope for the future can really change the tone of how you feel in your present situation. You could be having a terrible day at work, but you're thinking about a holiday you're about to have, and you go, I'll be okay. So the future can influence your present. So if you create goals that give you feelings of excitement, motivation, and hope, then your present moment can feel fantastic. These are the ways we can make ourselves mentally resilient. So in the 6C model, the first three C's were developed by an American psychologist, Suzanne Kobasa, in the early 80s. And she was doing work with executives, and she realized that through her work, her research uncovered that the executives who were able to perform under stress had this ability, which is challenge, in the pink one there. And that was, that they're able to take risks and feel comfortable in risky situations or uncertain situations, just like the present times. And even in those situations, they're able to notice opportunities and think very, very clearly. These guys were able to perform much better than people who didn't have that capacity. And then in 2002, Professor Peter Clough in the UK added confidence to Kobasa's model, which is a good addition to it. Then we've added community, which is that social connection, and then context, which is about that big picture perspective. So that's the 6C model, which is a well-rounded psychosocial model, not just psychological. And to be honest, since I've been working with this model and we've gotten it out of the head and into relationships and into the bigger picture, both individually and organizationally, had a much better response. People find the extra dimensions very, very useful. So what is mental resilience? So it's about being the best that you can be. It's not about being perfect. It's about feeling comfortable in your own skin, just being yourself, being prepared for life's difficulties and opportunities, and also having positive relationships and a sense of meaning. These dimensions are really important for people. Just a couple of examples of resilience. I'll move through these pretty quickly. Just coping is one expression of resilience. And that's just moving through an experience. It could be 1 minute, could be an hour, could be a week or a month, where some sort of crisis occurs, but we're able to manage our emotions. We're able to keep focus on priorities. We're able to practice self-care, and we can seek support when we need it. And through those measures, we're able to cope and get through. That's one form of resilience. Another form is in recovery situations, whether physically or emotionally. We have an injury or some difficulty or setback, and we become aware of that. Once we become aware of it, we can start thinking about what to do. So like I said before, the self-awareness is so important. So that we can take responsibility for the situation. We decide that we're going to remedy this situation ourselves, or with support. And then we take positive action to actually recover and get back to where we were before and carry on as usual. Now, this next one might resonate with you a bit more, considering we've just come through the pandemic. It's called post-traumatic growth. So it's growth after the trauma, basically. So we had a stressful situation. Let's imagine that cross is, say, January, February 2020. And then we all had the difficulties of the pandemic. Slowly but surely, we began to recover from it. But it was such a profound experience that our characters developed, and even our social capacities developed. And we're actually stronger and in a higher place than we were before in many respects. There's been this level of growth. So we go through that first process, the awareness, responsibility, and positive action. But through persistence, courage, and having perspective, we reach this new level. And then we can reflect on new growth and learning, and maybe even celebrate it. Okay, so just bringing it back to the topic. These capacities are really important for leaders to be able to come to work and to work at that higher level where it's not just self-care and getting their own work done, but they have that extra radar out for tuning into what the people around them need, and also having the grace and the awareness to be able to deal with things in a compassionate way that come to them, not reactively, but respond to them thoughtfully. It takes mental energy. It takes capacity to do that. It's not just some skill that you can learn. It takes strength from inside you. These strengths that I'm showing you, the 6 C's, are really strengths that you can cultivate to help you bring more of that capacity to work. Sorry. So commitment. So people with commitment are, are goal-oriented, enjoy achievement, are motivated. Basically, they do the things that they say they will do. They get things done, and having committed people on your team is a really great thing. There's upper limits to commitment, and as a compassionate leader, you want to be sensitive to people's point where they're struggling, or notice the signs of burnout, or people who will say, "Oh, it's okay, I'll do it." Keep an eye on those people and check in with them a little bit more often. It's being sentient and empathetic to those things, and also the fact that there's a power differential. They may not want to tell you they're struggling. Try to cultivate the relationship where that person is able to tell you that they're struggling. Control. Control has 2 aspects. It's about self-management, so managing your emotions. And if you're able to manage your emotions, it's very hard for anyone to provoke you or bullies to get it over you, or to even notice bullying happening to you. You don't really care. When you've got that composure and that control of your emotions, that ability to not react. But as a compassionate leader, you want to keep your eye out for people who have this ability, okay? Because they could be really struggling on the inside, but it doesn't show on the surface. So not to set unrealistic expectations on any leader, but just to be aware that things are not always as they seem, and it's good to have that extra perception.
Right, Jamie, there are a few questions here.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
One from Kathy about I found research in resilience that most focuses on the crisis situations, medical illnesses, etc. Are you finding more literature on normal life and building resilience in the VUCA world?
Yeah, not at the moment. I mean, I'm just generally grazing on information, but I haven't found that type of research at the moment. No, I haven't. But I definitely would like to know more about it. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Another question from Stella that could you explain perspective meaning of perspective? Does it mean changing your mind pattern?
It's about what you can see. Having a sense of perspective is seeing things accurately and fairly and in proportion. So if a crisis happens, you're able to compare the information about the crisis to other information and realize its sense of proportion. So this is usually what I'm meaning by perspective. And also, it's how far you can see and how clearly you can see, like a clear day or a cloudy day.
Right,
yeah.
right. Great.
And also having, as Jing Yan says there, just having a big picture perspective, seeing more of the situation, not just the small part.
Right. And just a shout out to some comments. So Jason Zhu was saying that it's related to life mission and vision, and Jason saying that if you want to develop your own emotional intelligence, start with an empathy for your own weaknesses and fears, identify within yourself. What are your limiting beliefs and what barriers do you hold to be true, and how you practice empathy for yourself and your growth mindset. Right. So thank you for comments.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic comments. Thank you. Okay. So the next aspect about control is about being able to manage your circumstances. So people who have high levels of control are, good problem solvers. They have a lot of self-efficacy. They're able to get in and influence things and make changes happen. So this is a good strength to have, and a good strength to have as a leader, but also has its upper limits. Very easy for a person not to be aware of how controlling they are, and to walk in and become a micromanager, or to not notice opportunities to step back and empower people and let them take control. As I said earlier, even if you feel you could do a better job, they need the chance to learn, and so supporting, guiding, directing if necessary. But yeah, the situational leadership model is a good one to look at for that. Challenge. So challenge is about taking risks. It's about being courageous. It's about calculating risks. So it's not just taking risks, gambling without thinking carelessly. It's not just jumping out there and not looking before you leap. It is carefully assessing risks, but it's also being brave, being in situations where you feel some danger or risk or uncertainty, and despite that, still moving forward. And so that's what challenge is about. And that's the nature of all challenges, really. And to develop any aspect of mental resilience, whether it's commitment or whether it's community, going out and meeting people, whether it's confidence, and particularly confidence, it's all about accepting challenges or giving yourself challenges, and because they prompt us to grow. So, and having a growth mindset is important. The important thing about challenge is you might be one of these, super brave people that can handle the stress and pressure, and you might even thrive in it, but not everyone around you does. And as a compassionate leader, it's very important to be aware that people around you are having different experiences of the same experience. Their experience can be very, very different. They can be terrified. You only need to imagine someone driving a little bit fast, but they feel safe, but the person next to them is just terrified. This can happen in organizations. This can happen with decisions that organizations make. People sitting around the same table in the same meeting, some are excited, some are terrified. So as a compassionate leader, very good to have a sense of that variance and to be able to tune into people and communicate with them if you feel there's a need to. So people who are high in challenge also not limited by perfectionism. Perfectionism is trying not to make any mistake. Okay, you're not going to grow very much if you take that approach to things. Because no one's perfect and the world is uncertain, and we need to go out and experiment. And just as we did when we were babies, and we didn't think twice about it. That's how we learned to walk. So life is like that too. And unless you completely want to avoid making any mistake, you won't grow. So very important to get out there and learn. Oh, actually, just going back to that one. As a compassionate leader, also very important to understand that the people in your organization are learning, and they will make mistakes, and to be compassionate about that process, not to scold them or ridicule them. Again, depending on the mistakes, some mistakes are pretty serious, but generally, the general approach to someone making a mistake. It's framing it as a learning experience, ensuring that they know how to do it right the next time or get the resources that they need to have that learning mindset or growth mindset. Confidence. Confidence has two aspects. One is about self-competence, like trusting your own abilities, knowing how to do certain things and feeling very comfortable with it. Or even if you don't know, having a fair amount of trust in yourself that you'll be able to work it out. So somebody could throw you a project or something, or an opportunity, a training opportunity or something. And at first you might think, don't know how to do that. But then you just say, well, I'll work it out and I'll do my best. One of my very first online experiences was with a very big company doing an online workshop. And I hadn't done anything before, hadn't even done a webinar before. And there I was, with a rather large company doing a team building session online for my first online workshop. So for me, that was a real growth experience, an example of me just trusting my ability to work it out somehow. And it worked out well. And then social confidence. Okay, social confidence is about your positioning in socially. Do you see yourself as equal to other people? It's really important. If you see yourself as better than other people, you've got a problem. If you see yourself as less than other people, you also got some work to do and some reflection. See yourself as equal to other people. Okay, they might have better skills than you. They might have higher status in certain areas, but they're all just human beings, just as you are. And to feel your own worthiness and equality to other people is a real advantage and a real source of resilience. Now, as a compassionate leader, allowing and encouraging and facilitating other people to have that experience too, to see themselves in that way that they're equal to other people, whatever their position in hierarchies or age or anything, or any aspect of diversity, to encourage that feeling of confidence. And community. People have a real capacity for community. It's not just the extroverts. It's about kindness and generosity. It's about thinking beyond yourself. People with this strength, they're always looking for how they can make a social situation or a team situation or group situation better. Thinking, they see people talking, it's like, maybe we need some food, or maybe we need to turn some music on, or turn the air conditioner on. They're thinking about the benefit and the well-being of other people and facilitating those experiences. So people with a strong sense of community enjoy collaborating with others, natural team players, often work for the benefit of all people, might be the first people to volunteer, always thinking about what does everyone else need, but also, as every strength, it's got a shadow side. You need to maintain your own self-care and well-being and inclusion in that care that you're giving out to everyone else. And also know when it's time to come back home again, to yourself, and have some time to regroup and restore your own energy. Very important to have that self-awareness. As a leader too, being aware that not everyone has the same enjoyment of these types of interactions, just being patient, sensitive with that. People have different level of thresholds for anxiety, different levels of energy for participation in community activities. So just being aware of that diversity. Oh yeah, all for one, one for all.
Jamie,
Yeah.
just a question again from Kathy.
Yep.
There are a number of assessments that measure many of these traits, like confidence, empathy, optimism, etc. So the question to you is, have you found any or combination of assessments that support your coaching work in this model?
I was previously with the 4Cs model. I was a master trainer in that system, and there's some good psychometrics on those first four psychological levels that can measure those capacities, which can be useful. So like the MTQ tests are pretty good for that. And we're also developing some questionnaires that can help people gain insight on where their strengths are and where they might want to develop it. The 4Cs assessment, is pretty good. Okay, so context, the big picture. So people with a sense of context, they're able to rise up into the big picture and look down on the situation and gain perspective and inform their judgment by that bigger picture. A leader with a sense of context is able to, like in a meeting, even a crisis meeting, able to think beyond the crisis to the big picture, thinking of policy and the organization's history and values and other people who might want to know about this. They're able to consult the whole big picture and then quickly come back down to the ground again and talk factually and practically about solutions going forward, rather than getting like lost up there and babbling, or being too philosophical. It's a real strength to be able to consult that big picture, to give wisdom and to get good judgment in decisions that need to be made. On an individual level, it's really helpful to know your own story, to know where you come from, to know who you are now and why you're here where you are, to know the story of your career or your family, of the things that you experiences that you've had in your life that have formed you and shaped you, mentors and influential people in your life, and also that sense of your future, what you want to do for the rest of your life, who you want to be with for the rest of your life, where you want to be. Having a sense of these things and shaping goals around them creates a continuity between the past, present, and future. And that can be very stabilizing, forms a sense of trajectory and identity. So these are great strengths to have. And also, these also match onto teams and companies also. The teams and companies also have their history, they have their values and their mission and their vision for the future. And aligning all of these things really well is a source of resilience. As a compassionate leader, it's good to understand that not everyone has this ability, and that people are often living in silos, even socially within teams. May be very isolated and not have a sense of other activities that everyone's doing or other resources available in the company, or may not know how their team fits into the scheme of things in their company. So helping people expand their perspective can also be very stabilizing and reassuring for them. I see a couple of questions there.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions. So Yuzak is from Indonesia. So in Asia, we may have different mindsets and culture. So as we are being raised by our parents in Asia. So how does this affect our levels of resilience and compassion?
Very, very good question. It's the test results that I used to use really show the difference in confidence between the East and the West. The difference in interpersonal confidence, and also the confidence in abilities. So people in Asia were generally, in the Asian part of the world, generally had higher levels of confidence in their abilities than people in the West. Whereas people in the West generally had higher levels of interpersonal or social confidence. And this created some really interesting features of the different cultures. I think part of the reason, and from many discussions, because I do a lot of work in China also, many discussions in groups with people there, the power differential between parent and child, or teacher and student, or boss and employee, is much steeper in China and in many Asian countries than in the West. In the West, is a little bit more flat. The children speak back to the parents more. People speak back against their boss more. Part of it is that the interpersonal confidence, as it's a flatter hierarchy, gives a greater sense of confidence. And one of the tragedies, I guess, in many ways is, tragedy is a bit of a dramatic word, but one of the challenges is that, in any company around the world, but particularly in the Asian part of the world, helping people to become more confident to speak up in meetings and to share their talent, because they're so talented. They have the confidence in their abilities, but they're sitting there quietly because they don't want to say anything, because it could cause trouble because of the hierarchy difference, the perception of hierarchy, and that will have a cost. And so for organizations to create that psychological safety through leaders being compassionate and encouraging people to talk, more of that talent can emerge and come forward, and people can speak up, ask questions, share ideas. So yeah, hope that answers the question.
Right. The next question is about community as well. So it's from Beatrice or Beatrice. As many of I do identify myself in this, how would you suggest to better balance the natural sense of community and the human need of me time to recharge?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really about self-awareness, as we mentioned before, and it's really a combination of emotional intelligence and well-being and interaction, both of it stemming from your own self-awareness. It's like, okay, I'm getting tired, or I've been talking at this place so much now, my throat's so dry, it's probably a sign to sit down and have a rest. I've been overextending myself, or I'm on this business trip and I'm trying to do as much as possible and see my friends at the same time. I'm just exhausting myself. I need to have a rest. And so becoming aware of your condition and doing something about it. So it's really about self-awareness and self-regulation to manage that. And the same as going out and just being a social butterfly, you can really deplete your energy.
Yeah. To that, it also depends on one's capacity to socialize. So generally, if you're an extrovert, the more people you meet, the more energy you get. If you're more introverted, then the more people you meet, the more you drain off your energy. So it's a matter of balancing. And even for extroverts, it doesn't mean that extroverts has got endless stream of energy by seeing lots of people. So there's going to be a threshold at some point. So on one hand, I think we need to spend more time with the community and gain strength and support from the community. And of course, there's a time to kind of self-regulate and have what Patricia is saying about me time. And a comment from Stella. So it's a high requirement to the leader. The leader must know everything about his or her members. So I don't know how's the comment on that about leader really understanding each member.
So once again, just as a compassionate leader would not want the people in that company or in his team or her team to have unfair expectations on themselves. The leaders themselves shouldn't have that too. It's just about doing better, and better and better, and growing your capacity for being more aware of what people need over time. So there's no metric on it. There's no KPI. It's just about generally getting better.
And then a comment from Kathy, there are a number of interesting sites and resources about introverts and leadership, and as sometimes it seems the business world revolves around extroverts, and bring this into the team discussions can be helpful as probably a mixture of appreciating the strengths of both introverts and extroverts.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And also, not to mistaken silence for lack of ideas or talent. It's a conscious leader and a compassionate leader will be really paying attention to the quiet people in the meetings also, not just the person who's really confident to speak up and share more than other people or even share excessively. So I think that's a really important ability for the leader to have, and to be able to action that on the spot, to having a sense of immediacy without saying, oh, Karen, I'm just wondering what you're thinking about this. Do you have any ideas to share? Without putting the person on the spot too much. But, hopefully you've cultivated in other places at other times, cultivated enough rapport and relationship that may not be too confronting, to ask someone a direct question in a meeting. It's just being gentle, more gentle with some people, but also not leaving them out.
Sorry, just to rumble along, and because it kind of reminds me of what I mentioned as psychological safety. So if you're a compassionate leader, and when people are silent, well, they could be reflective, as is what Kath has mentioned, to be introverted and active in their minds, but not really speaking out. On the other hand, it could also be people thinking that if I say the wrong thing, could I be embarrassed? Could I, I have an idea, but I don't know if it works. Will people laugh and make fun of me? So the compassionate leader could also invite the silent ones to go to a safe environment to share whatever is on their mind.
Yeah. And there's, that meeting and on the spot in that meeting may not be the place. It could be that one-to-one conversation in a safer and less pressured environment, saying, wondering what you're thinking in the meeting. Did you have any thoughts? Just be able to have that. But even a statement like that has to sit in the context of some rapport and sense of safety. It could be incredibly confronting in some contexts, asking that question if you don't have any rapport with the person, or if there's some sort of tension between you and that person.
Which is the next question. How do you then create that safe environment for silent people to share more?
Yeah. So I guess one way you do it is by role modeling. By role modeling your own vulnerability. I can give you an example right now, like just a small example, nothing heroic. Sometimes I get incredible anxiety before I ask a question. I don't even understand it. My body has that reaction, and it's just like, okay, I just need to breathe and just wait until my breathing's right. Otherwise, my throat's going to be dry. I won't be able to talk. Even me, Mr. Mental Resilience. Human beings are human. We don't entirely understand ourselves. We can only do our best. And when you know that, you can be incredibly compassionate to other people. You can realize it's okay. I suffer too. I have these confusions or these difficult experiences also. And it's just about doing your best and hopefully getting better over time. And different solutions work for different people. Whatever evidence says, it's great, but it's just a reference point. It's people got to find what works for them. So I think to answer that question, we just need to create a culture where people feel safe, where people feel where there's no obvious signs of threat. And there hasn't been any recent examples of people being blasted or ridiculed or put down. If those things can be managed out of the culture, I don't mean people managed out, but I mean those attitudes, can be changed. People can gradually start to feel a bit safer and bring out more of their ideas, and even more sensitive people more likely to be able to do that. So I think it's working. It's a systemic, and it takes time. It's a systemic issue, and it takes time to create that environment through psychological safety, aspiring to psychological safety through compassionate leadership and other measures. Yeah. Okay. I'll keep going. So yeah, having a sense of the big picture is really, really useful. Help, especially with decision making and stabilizing yourself in uncertain times. For example, if you've been through a hard time, remembering hard times that you've been through and recovered from, and then you're in a new hard time and you think, I've been through things like this before, it's going to be all right. And just being able to give yourself that reassurance from yourself, and from someone else too, but also to have your own self-sufficiency in this area is a really good skill. So developing mental resilience. There's lots and lots of strategies, lots and lots of books. I like to just encourage people to learn through life experience and setting yourselves challenges. It might come from my outdoor education days, as a rock climbing instructor. When people face challenges, they have an opportunity to learn. And if you set your own challenges, you can learn something whenever you want. Just by trying things a little bit more differently, or pushing yourself a little bit further than usual. So simple daily practice. Challenge yourself with any one of the C's. For example, if you wanted to challenge yourself with control, emotional control, you can be aware of the next time you're about to react, either with anxiety or anger or any emotion, even attraction, whatever it is, and become aware of the moment that emotion starts to emerge and work out what to do with it, whether to express it or hold it off till later. It's a great skill to be able to, I'm not encouraging anyone to suppress their emotions, but it's great to be able to choose when to express it if you're going to. And especially if you're feeling angry or something in a workplace situation, you really want to control that stuff and process it, diffuse it, and express it if you need to, or find some way to let it go. So challenge yourself with any one of the 6 C's. Reflect on the experience before, on the lead up to it, during the experience, and also hindsight, looking back on it. And write reflectively about the experience in a reflective journal. Really recommend this. I know it's not everyone's solution, but it's a great way to learn, especially about these deeper capacities and about yourself. because you can look back on your previous writings and you can even notice how much you've grown or changed. Continue to practice again and again, just taking small steps, each time improving on the next. And here's some examples. So commitment, maintaining more focus on daily tasks and weekly goals. Just being a bit more deliberate about it is enough to start improving your level of commitment. Start to become a bit more conscientious. You're developing the neural pathways, the whole fire and wire thing. You know, the neurons that fire together wire together. And so your brain will just become, it will develop the natural competence to be more committed. Control, so pausing, breathing, reflecting, and not reacting if feeling irritated. It's very easy to feel irritated once or twice a day, and it's great to capture it and become aware of it and manage it really, really quickly. Challenge, so pushing yourself a little bit further than you usually do in any area, whether it's taking the steps or being a bit more organized or having a conversation with someone you're nervous to talk to, speaking up in a meeting, asking that question when you're feeling nervous. All of these things help us to grow. Confidence.
Jamie, yep. This is a suggestion about how about writing reflective journal every day?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, some people do it methodically, like they might do it every day, or some people will do it in response to a situation that they feel requires reflection. So you can do it either way. It depends. You know, some people are very methodical and have that kind of regular discipline. That's one way to do it. It's not necessary to do it that way. It might just be more about. It's a little bit. It's a funny example for me to use, but a little bit like combing your hair. You know, when you notice some knots there, comb them out. So mentally combing out your knots, or just reflecting on a situation where you had some feelings that you don't understand. Important aspect or important thing about reflecting with reflective journaling is to reflect rather than ruminate. So reflection is a process of reflecting on a situation in the hope of achieving insight or a greater understanding of what happened or what could happen about a situation. Rumination is rather just going in emotional circles and usually descending circles. It's not very good. It's been associated in research with depression. So it's good to identify these two. They look similar, but they're quite different. And it's all about the outcome. So the outcome or purpose of reflective journaling is to gain insight or a greater understanding of something. So using your journaling for that and not as a doom and gloom reinforcer is very important. So yeah, confidence, speaking up in meetings and sharing your ideas more often. Community, so organizing a team activity or contributing in some other way. Even if you bring out the tray of biscuits or something, you know, just doing something to contribute on that level rather than always just being on your own. It's great to step into that space, and it's usually very welcoming, and there's the feeling of belonging that you can get from participating in that community building way is very, very good, and it's a basic human need. And context, so take some time to visualize how you want your future to be, you know, or reflect on past experiences that taught you important lessons. These things can be very reinforcing and help you to build up that capacity for context. Okay, so I like to share this little strategy. It's just a bit of a takeaway for you. It used to be the four Ds. It's now the 5 Ds. I'll tell you why shortly. It's basically just a quick strategy for managing emotional reactions. Whether it's anger and anxiety come to mind, but it could be other things too. So one of the first things you can do is delay your response. So you have the feeling you want to act on it, but you don't. And you just, however you do it, you know, counting, watching the clock, just not responding so quickly. When you create that space between stimulus and response, you have the more and more chance of making a good decision. More options become apparent rather than the reactive option, which is usually not a good decision. So delay, wait, don't send that email, don't send that text or WeChat message. Come back to baseline, your breathing, your pulse, your physical tension, your perspective before you actually respond. And you may find that you don't need to respond. Another way to do it is to distract yourself. Distraction is also a form of delay. Okay, so if I'm feeling upset, if I start doing mathematics in my mind, it's a way I'm actually distracting I'm sending my mental attention away from the emotional part of my brain to prefrontal cortex, executive functions. I'm actually coming back to the more rational and logical part of my brain. This is actually helping me to de-escalate emotionally. And also the delay factor also is helping me come back to my baseline of pulse and breathing and tension. And also distracting my mind from the stimulus and getting more perspective in the meantime. I used to do this with public speaking. One of my strategies was to count the lights in the room. Like if I was up on a stage and there's a whole bunch of people there, if I started having that anxiety thing I was talking about before, I would just like look up and count the lights in the room. And it always worked. It always worked. And, people in the audience would just think, oh, he's thinking something deep and meaningful or philosophical, looking up in the sky. I wasn't. I was holding on for dear life. And it really worked.
Right. There's this, Andreas is saying 5Ds versus fight or flight. Andreas, would you like to unmute and elaborate a bit more?
That's pretty much what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's it's a great comment. Thank you for that, Andreas. It's exactly what it is. It's to the whole the hijacking reflex, and to work against it. Sorry. Next one is deep breathe. So deep breathing, box breathing is great. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold empty, breathe in again for 4 seconds. This is a fantastic way to manually regain control of your body, when it's reacting with anger or anxiety or other emotions. Now, again, I know how it could sound. It could sound like I'm talking about blocking emotions and everything. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting being able to control extreme emotions in situations where it's not really favorable to let them loose. And there are those times. Any professional knows that. I've done a lot of work in hospitality with my partner, George Ubalodi. And I was always so amazed and admired the ability of people in hospitality to just maintain their grace no matter what's happening. The pressure they're under, or if they're dealing with a difficult guest or having some personal issue, just to be able to come back out and have that composure to interact professionally in their environment. So it's really exceptional. So learning these skills to be able to regulate yourself is really useful. So deep breathing gets your body back into control, but it's also a distraction and it's also a delay. So this kind of has a snowballing effect of fighting back against that fight or flight, or gaining control of it.
Right. Two comments. I'll start with Stella first. Stella says that she has a different idea. She thinks that distracting makes her fly away from the moment, and she can't know what happened to her all at once.
Okay. Yeah. I guess the distraction really worked if that's happening. Yeah, I mean, it's good to be able to kind of come back to the situation and maybe later it's a matter of hindsight, reflecting in hindsight about, wow, what actually happened there, and journaling about that. When that happened, I felt this, and then I guess I just reacted, or I distracted myself in this way. So maybe it's a situation where you need to look back on to understand it.
Right. So Rosalind was asking about the slide before the 5D. But what I was saying is that I think that they will send out a shortened version of the presentation to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's going to work. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So drinking water. Wherever there's human beings, there's water. Water is great. It's a great mood stabilizer, non-pharmaceutical mood stabilizer. You'll notice if you're not drinking water, your mood will deteriorate. Once you drink water, you'll feel good again. Okay. Now, when you drink, it's a great circuit breaker. If you're talking to someone and you need to get away from them, or you're in a meeting, you're feeling anxious, just getting that cup and filling the jug and drinking the water can be a fantastic way to preoccupy yourself and to distract yourself. So first of all, you're giving your body something that it needs. Usually after we drink, we have a deep breath. We re-engage our body and our breathing. It's a great distraction and it's a great delay. And it's wherever there's human beings, unless you're lost in the desert, it's always there somewhere. So as I mentioned before, it used to just be the 4Ds. And I was doing a workshop in Shanghai once, and a great friend of mine, a psychologist in Shanghai, was attending the training, and he said, I know a 5th D. And I was like, yeah, what is it? And he goes, disappear. So to actually disappear. So when he said that, I laughed and I thought it was a joke, but actually it's not a bad idea. You know, if you're actually not going to be able to manage that reaction, it could be a good idea to, you know, go down to the bathroom or something, or go outside for a little while, find some reason to leave the situation if you can't control your escalating. And if you feel that you're going to do something reactive that you will later regret, or, you know, it won't lead to a good outcome, then it's not such a bad idea to actually leave the situation for a while or even permanently. It's not the most favorable option, but if you're really struggling to have any control, yeah, it can be really a good option.